Okay, we can restart it.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for this opportunity, Dr. Santos, Dr. Ochoa. I'm very grateful. Maybe I'll start by introducing myself first of all. So my name is Jeff Bell. I work for an organization called Edmonton Global here in Western Canada. Edmonton is the 5th largest city in Canada. Only 1.5 million people. So by Brazilian standards, still very small city. But for Canada, it's a fairly important city. It's the capital city of the Western province of Alberta. And it is just east of the Rocky Mountains, which makes us a landlocked province. But I'll get a little bit into the details around our area in a moment. First, I just want to again thank everyone for inviting me here this evening. If I am talking too quickly, or if there's something you don't understand, please interject and ask questions at any time. We don't have to wait till the end. Unfortunately, I don't speak any Portuguese, so you're stuck with me speaking English.
No problem.
So,
no problem.
Okay, that's good.
Hmm.
Your professors have asked me or invited me to come and share a little bit of perspective on the energy sector from where I'm sitting here in Western Canada. I've spent most of my career working in the energy sector, mainly renewable energy, electricity, and also fuels. And then more recently in technologies more broadly. I'll start with just giving a bit of background on our region. So let's see here. So that's where we are in the world. You can see there. We're the white area on the map. I'm not sure if you can see can you see my pointer or not?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So yeah, we're right here, this little white area. That's the Edmonton region. So the capital of Canada over here is Ottawa. The major city is Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. Those are the three largest cities. The 4th largest city is Calgary, which is just below us, and we're here in Edmonton. And so Edmonton Global is the regional economic development agency for the city and the surrounding region. So here you have the city and then the larger area around it. So we are a fairly large area. And our job at Edmonton Global is to attract foreign companies to our region. So we want to get companies from Brazil, from South America, from Europe, from Africa, from Asia to all come to our region and grow their businesses here because that helps create jobs and economic activity. And also from our perspective, very importantly, helps us diversify our economy because we're our economy is very dependent on energy. So we want to diversify it beyond energy. And what we do is we help these companies, our organizations, my colleague Victor and I, who's also on the call, we help companies come to the region. And I should say Victor does speak Portuguese. So if there's any hard questions, I'll refer them to him.
Okay.
Okay. So we like to say that our region we're young, we're educated, and we're growing. That's how we try to attract people to our region because we think that investors are interested in the people that they can hire for their business. And we have very young people, very educated people, and a lot of them relative to other jurisdictions. So here, a little bit of data just to back that up. So you can see here, the city of Edmonton in the red compared to some of the other jurisdictions in North America and Canada. The provincial average is in yellow, and we're very young compared to others with an age of 37.8. So I don't know how that compares to Brazil. It might actually be older compared to your region. I don't know. But for North America, we're very young. We're very educated. So again, The top one is the Edmonton region. So we have 60% almost of our population has a university or college degree, which is fairly significant. These here are some of our major post-secondary institutions and universities in the bottom right. And then we're growing. Most of the people that are coming to our region are coming from international regions. We're welcoming people from Brazil. We're welcoming people from across Latin America, the United States, Europe, the Middle East, Asia. We're a very, very diverse city, and every year we're more and more diverse. We also are getting people from natural births from other provinces within Canada and from elsewhere within the province of Alberta. So at Edmonton Global, my organization, we do have several focus areas: energy, health sciences, artificial intelligence and software, food and agriculture, and logistics. Tonight, I'm going to focus on the energy and clean technology, especially the electricity sector. But if you have questions about any of those sectors, we can maybe have a conversation. So talking about electricity transition. So here we have data from the, maybe before I dive into this, I should introduce myself too. So within the organization, my job is the researcher. Both Victor and I are part of the research team. So our job is to understand, if we're trying to sell the city of Edmonton, our job is to understand what about the city of Edmonton is attractive. So we do all sorts of research on demographics, on economics, on various market sectors, on various companies that are interesting, that sort of thing. So that I just felt that would be useful context for you before I continue. So here we have data that I pulled from the International Energy Agency out of France, and they're comparing the electricity mix by countries. And I inserted Brazil here just for a comparison, but the conclusion here is that I think we have very similar electricity systems in Canada and Brazil. You can see the big blue bars here is the hydroelectricity, and then the other forms are much smaller in relation. So that's at a national level in Brazil and a national level in Canada. Let's see here next. So and I believe, like Brazil, we are also an exporting nation of electricity. So we export electricity to our neighbors to the south, the United States. And this just shows that we have an abundance of clean electricity, so much so that the Americans are relying on us to supply them electricity as well. This is to demonstrate the transition of electricity over time, over a 20-year period. So a few things here, and this is for Canada as a whole. You can see that the demand for power has increased, I would say modestly. So from about 600 terawatt hours to maybe 640 over a 20-year period. So it's not incredible growth, demand growth for electricity. The other things you can notice is the wind here and the bioenergy and the solar, they're pretty small at the beginning, but most of the growth in total has been met by renewables. And I would say non-hydro renewables for the growth. At the same time, you can see coal here being slowly getting lower and lower. So that's important for us because we're finding many international investors, when they are looking for a destination, they want a place where they can get clean energy. So that's part of the reason why this whole topic is interesting to me. Okay, remember, you can interject at any time if you have questions. The next slide here talks about Canada's electricity mix on the left two bars, and Alberta, our province, on the right two bars. So what this tells us is a few things. One, you can see a lot more gray and black in our region compared to Canada. And that's because we have much less hydroelectricity compared to our neighbors across Canada. In Canada, for example, you can see much of the growth in electricity demand or electricity supply, I should say, is coming from renewables, and that's largely going to be the non-hydro renewables. In Alberta, you can see the same here and here. Between 2010 and 22, renewables is going up considerably, but the biggest story here is this black bar shrinking so much. So this black bar, of course, is coal, and we're in the process of phasing out our coal in Alberta, even though until recently 60% of our coal, of our electricity came from coal. We're very aggressively phasing that out, and it's being mixed or resupplied by gas, which is the green, and natural gas, which is the gray, and renewables, which is the green. And this shows us just how significantly and quickly we were able to switch off of coal electricity. So each of these bars across the time is a coal plant that was supplying electricity to our province and also exporting. And you can see here, the very bottom graph, in 2011, it was a new plant. So we were building new coal plants as recently as 2011. But this red dotted line shows when we're expecting the last coal plant to be phased out, which is this year. So very, very quickly, there was a political decision in probably about 8 years ago to phase out coal, to get rid of coal and to clean our grid. And now a short time later, we've almost achieved that. So that's a very significant achievement for our province. Now, talking about gas, so as I said before, most of that electricity capacity that was previously met with coal is now being met with gas. And part of the reason for that is because we're very, very rich in gas. And also, it's very, very cheap. And this data shows that relative to other jurisdictions across the globe, this dark blue line here, which is Alberta, has consistently some of the cheapest gas in the world, and in fact it's cheaper than the Henry Hub, which is the U.S. benchmark price here at the bottom. So if you're looking for cheap gas, our region is a good place to come, either as a fuel source for electricity or as a feedstock for chemical manufacturing, hydrogen, others. And hydrogen is where we're really focusing in as an organization, but also as a region going forward. So we think it's a very important transition fuel to get us away from a carbon intensity energy system to a low carbon or zero carbon energy system over time. So I'm going to speak a little bit to that because it's of great interest to our organization. So this kind of reinforces, or this builds upon the slide that we had earlier showing the cheap natural gas. So what this is showing different energy mixes to produce hydrogen. So for example, using solar in Vietnam, using solar in Indonesia, solar in China. And then you get down here, China and coal is cheaper, Russia and coal plus carbon capture and storage is cheaper still. But at the very bottom here, you see Canada, natural gas, and carbon capture and storage. And so we can produce some of the cheapest hydrogen in the world. And we can do it cheaper than the price of diesel on a dollar per kilogram basis. So very cheap hydrogen. And this hydrogen is produced from natural gas, unlike hydrogen in other places in the world that's produced from renewable energy. We also produce hydrogen from renewable energy, and we hope to produce more, but the majority of our hydrogen right now is produced from natural gas. Okay. This data, again, from the International Energy Agency in France, they compiled all of the, in their words, net zero hydrogen production facilities in the world. And you can see here, United States as a country leads the world in terms of existing hydrogen production capacity. So this isn't production per se, this is the capacity to produce, existing capacity to produce. And our region, which is a city of 1.5 million people compared to the country of 300 million people, is a third or close to a half of the net zero hydrogen production.
Only in Edmonton region, Professor.
Yeah.
A massive.
Yeah. So the vast majority of the hydrogen produced in Canada is produced in the Edmonton region, and much of that, I think about a third of that, is currently net zero, using the definition of the International Energy Agency. So they have a formula. Oh, go ahead.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Jeff, but this production in Edmonton region is in natural gas by CCS. Yes,
correct.
The production of hydrogen.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So they have a formula. The International Energy Agency uses a formula which I can share with you after the presentation if you wish, to prorate blue hydrogen production to net zero. So this graph would include all the hydrogen in the world produced from renewable sources like solar, wind, geothermal, etc. But it also includes carbon capture and storage produced hydrogen, because they see it as net zero. They account for parasitic loads, right? Because it takes energy to capture and store the hydrogen, but they're accounting for that here in their calculations.
Yeah.
So we're a globally significant region in the world for net zero hydrogen production already. This is existing. We're hoping to build upon this and become even more important. Next one here is talking about some of the uses for hydrogen. So right now, all this hydrogen here from this slide, the vast majority is being used for petrochemical feedstock inputs, hydrogenation of various hydrocarbons, putting the hydro in hydrocarbons. And so our challenge now, to take us to the next level, we want to expand it to use in other uses like transportation, like heating, like industrial power, etc. And so there's a whole suite of pilot programs that you can see here where we're doing just that. So the top one here is using hydrogen for heavy duty trucks, for hauling cargo down the highway. This is another one here, the second row, where we're converting existing diesel engines to use either diesel or hydrogen, or a combination of that. So a blended fuel using hydrogen and diesel to reduce the carbon intensity of the diesel. The third row is a similar project, but for buses. This one here is the fourth row is quite interesting. They're using it for residential heating. So they're using hydrogen for as a source of heat for houses, and they're piping the hydrogen directly into the houses. This fifth row is for trains and locomotives using hydrogen as a fuel source. And the last one is a novel production method. So most of the hydrogen right now is using steam methane reforming in our region, but there's various companies locally here who are pioneering new novel ways of producing hydrogen from different methods. And in this case, it's using pyrolysis. And I believe it's using either biomass or fossil fuel pyrolysis in this case. So a lot of kind of innovation, experimentation happening in the hydrogen space here in our region. One of the reasons we're interested in hydrogen is to decarbonize our own energy. But another thing that we're very interested in is the potential to help other jurisdictions decarbonize their energy, specifically Asia, places like China, Japan, Korea, also the United States, places like California and along the West Coast. Is there an opportunity for us to export our hydrogen to these places? because we are producing it so cheaply and so abundantly and so cleanly. And the suspicion is that, yes, there is an opportunity to do that. And one of the reasons for that is we feel we have competitive advantages in terms of connectivity to these markets. So we can get from the Edmonton region here in yellow to Asia in 11 days, whereas from the Middle East, which is another big source player in the hydrogen production space, it takes them 18 days to get to Asia from the Middle East. And from Texas down in the Gulf Coast here, they have to go through Panama, and it takes them up to 25 days. So we feel like we have an advantage there in terms of proximity to markets. Okay. Oops. And then the next thing that I'll speak to is carbon capture and storage. So I've talked a lot about blue hydrogen or clean hydrogen. In our case, as you pointed out, Dr. Ochoa, that the hydrogen is being used, being generated from natural gas. But the reason we can call it net zero hydrogen, or the International Energy Agency is calling it net zero hydrogen, is because we have carbon capture and storage capability. And the important thing here is that we have the geology. So this is a natural advantage that cannot be made or produced. It's basically a function of the rocks that are beneath us and their ability to store gases. And it goes hand in hand with us being rich in hydrocarbon natural gas, because some of those same geological formations can be used to capture the carbon dioxide from the natural gas once you've extracted the hydrogen via steam methane reforming or via combustion. So Edmonton here is in one of the red zone, which is highly suitable. So you can see here that in Brazil, there's a few areas that are suitable, and then there's some white areas. And I think what that means is maybe the geology still hasn't been determined. They don't know if it's suitable or not. Okay. So apart from the geology, there's some other reasons why we're really good at carbon capture and storage. And that is the second reason besides geology is infrastructure. So we already have quite a bit of infrastructure to facilitate carbon capture and storage. So for example, we have this pipeline here that goes north of the city, 100 kilometers south to an oil field to produce, to ship the carbon capture or the carbon dioxide for storage. We also have localized hydrogen pipelines and CO2 pipelines within our region here. And there's plans for many more. Then the other one that's really important that I like to highlight is the regulatory piece. So one of the reasons these big companies are investing in carbon capture and storage in our region, as opposed to other regions, is because we have the legal framework, meaning we have the laws and the policies that are already existing that allow carbon capture to happen. So an investor can have confidence that if they invest in a carbon capture, there's a legal framework which protects them. For example, who owns the space into which the carbon is going to be stored? In some jurisdictions, that's still a question mark. And so there's risk for investors to go ahead with large projects. But here in the Alberta region and the Edmonton region, that's been taken care of. There is an existing legal framework. The other thing that I'll mention that they're trying to do that's quite interesting is instead of having every company store their own carbon, they're inviting every company to capture their own carbon and then ship it to a third party who will store it. So there's a limited number of companies or organizations who will be doing the storing of their carbon capture and storage. And that's to reduce bureaucracy, to speed up policy, permitting times, but also to have better accountability, because if there's fewer people who are storing the carbon, there's fewer people who are accountable. So I think that's an interesting innovation that other jurisdictions could look at. Again, comparing the Edmonton region here in green this time to other jurisdictions globally for existing carbon capture capacity, we fare very well. And that goes hand in hand with the previous slide about I showed about hydrogen. And because we have this carbon capture and storage capacity here, which and this is interesting too, and I don't know the story, so maybe you folks know the story here, but Brazil is actually #2 in the world according to the Global Carbon Capture and Storage Association. I think they're out of Washington. And according to them, USA has the most existing capacity as of 2022, followed by Brazil, followed by Australia, and then our city would be #4. And then you can see here in yellow.
Jeff,
Go ahead.
Jeff, just to maybe to explain, in the case of Brazil, I believe that the big number, the link is the reinjection of CO2 in the offshore production of oil gas in pre-salt.
Okay.
I think that the CCS in Edmonton region is a little bit different. And in advance, I would like, if you have reports, explain better the legal framework of CCS, or reports, talk more, I will appreciate, because I think that the context is different between Brazil and Edmonton region. Okay, I'm sorry for my interruption. Okay, please.
Not at all.
Keep going.
No, I'm happy. So if I understood correctly, I think you wanted me to go back to this slide and talk about the legal framework a little bit more. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The injection of CO2 in this case is the production of oil and gas, and the industries that capture your CO2 production, or just the oil and gas production.
Okay. Yeah. So you can see on this map, there's a lot going on this map, but these little circles at the bottom are CO2 emissions. So this is sources of emission in megatons per annum, I believe. So megatons per year. Okay. And you can see these ones here. These are coal plants, these big ones out here. These are petrochemical plants here. These are oil production facilities way up here. There's some fertilizers, there's some plastic manufacturing. So this is very diverse sectors. There's
very nice, Jeff. I'm sorry. It is fantastic because it is different, and I think that in Brazil we have opportunity to develop this kind of business. I talk like this even. This kind of business, this completely different of the CCS in Brazil, just associate with oil and gas production from pre-salt, offshore pre-salt. Okay, I'm sorry again. Please go ahead.
Not at all. Yeah. So this pipeline here, the one that goes south. So from these orange dots south, this is used for enhanced oil production. So they're injecting the CO2 into the ground. So they're burning the fuel up here, capturing the storage here, and then piping the CO2 100 kilometers south to inject it into a oil field. But they do keep the CO2 in the ground. And my understanding is in Brazil, the CO2 comes back up, but here the CO2 stays in the ground and the oil comes back up, or I think actually it's natural gas. This one
once more, just to explore more, when I think in Brazil, for instance, Batista, né, visit the industrial polo in Bahia, and now currently we have a decarbonization commission in the industrial region, and maybe the best alternative for decarbonization is to use the model that you can see in Edmonton. I'm sorry, I promise that now I stop to talk. Okay, go ahead.
No, no
please.
problem.
Yeah, no, I encourage everyone to talk. Does anyone else want to interject? Dr. Santos or anyone else?
No.
No?
At the end,
Okay,
I want
Okay.
to ask you another question at the end.
okay. I was going to finish that thought, Ricardo or Dr. Choet. So this one here is for enhanced oil recovery. So it's carbon capture utilization and storage, CCUS. Now this pipeline going north, this little bit here, it's a different pipeline. And that's just CCS, carbon capture and storage, because it's geological sequestration. There's no utilization for it right now. It's solely to decarbonize. So it does vary from industry and from specific project. But the idea, and then these larger colors here, these are potential hubs for carbon capture and storage. So geographic boundaries around which anyone within those boundaries will use a designated carbon storage company that I alluded to. And so they have the possible names here. So the Atlas Polaris organization will be responsible for capturing storage in this portion, is my understanding. Keep in mind, I'm not an expert in any of this. This is just me sharing with you what I understand. So, so if you were a coal plant, say one of these red dots, and you want to store your storage underground, instead of drilling your own well underground and managing the framework and all this of how you actually store it underground, you would work with what's here called the Wabamun Hub, and you would sell presumably your CO2 to them, and they would store it, or vice versa. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more context. This is all being developed as we speak. So this is all a work in progress, but they're talking about, proposed new pipelines, proposed management areas for the carbon capture, to build upon the existing stuff that we already have. Okay, so I think I was here, and then I wanted to talk, and this also touches on your question, Dr. Ochoa, around who is doing this storage. So the answer is it's very diverse, the investors, both in terms of industry and geography. So people are coming from all over the world to the Edmonton region because of this carbon capture and storage capability that differentiates us from elsewhere. So we have existing projects like the Dow plastics plant. They're talking about reinvesting in our region at the expense of other plants of their own around the world because of this carbon capture. And we're looking at about a $10 billion Canadian investment. Air Products, it's already underway as well. So this is production of hydrogen using carbon capture and storage. Heidelberg Materials, it's a cement plant existing, and they just announced a big project to do carbon capture and storage in our region. Biodiesel, renewable fuel, is talking about using carbon capture and storage. Ammonia, fertilizer, these two are proposed. So the plants don't exist yet, but they're looking at our region because of the carbon capture and storage. And I believe that might be my last slide. Let's just see here. Yeah, that's my last slide.
Jeff, once more. As I mentioned in the Decarbonization Commission from Petroquímico Polo of Camaçari, because one of these companies is Dow company, and the idea for our next meeting is to bring the case of Dow in Canada, I suppose in Edmonton, in the region of Alberta, just to illustrate. And I think that it's really, really important to us to understand more the Edmonton case in terms of the CCS. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, Jeff, really.
No, that's okay. That's basically all I had to say. So at this point, we can talk more about your questions, but I think I outlined the main reasons why I think there's so much activity going on in carbon capture utilization, but happy to explore other ideas or questions.
Jeff, I did just want to mention it. So another thing from the economics piece, in Brazil, they do not have a carbon tax or a carbon credit system. So that drives incentive in Canada, and where there is a carbon tax in other jurisdictions. So you can come to Canada, you can claim that against your tax and get a credit, and then you can be funded for that carbon emission.
Interesting perspective, Victor. Good.
Yeah. Does Lucille have a question?
No.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, well, I mean, I focused a lot on hydrogen and especially natural gas hydrogen with CCUS. I didn't talk about the renewable development that's happening here, which is very abundant as well. We do have a lot of hydro potential here in the province. However, there's difficulties in developing it because of environmental concern, justified environmental concerns. We do have abundant solar and wind. We have abundant biomass because of our big northern forests that we have in the region. So it's not all about natural gas. I hope I didn't mislead you by saying that, but there's also a lot of other stuff happening. Last time I checked, there was about 1,000 megawatts of mainly solar farms being developed in the immediate region of our city. So that's pretty significant.
Okay, interesting. And I have a question. I think it's not specifically about hydrogen, but I have a curiosity about the nuclear power plant, because in Brazil we have some nuclear power plants, and I see that today people have a very bad perception about nuclear power plant. And what is the Canada policy about it?
Yeah. So we do have, so the red here is nuclear. That's for in Canada. We do have nuclear. Most of that is in Ontario. There's also a plant in Quebec and in New Brunswick, so 2 other provinces. We don't have any nuclear plants in Western Canada yet. Yeah. I would be surprised to see a conventional nuclear plant proceed because of those apprehensions, Marcos, and those perceptions, like you said. There is interest in smaller modular nuclear reactors. Again, I don't know if we'll see those anytime soon, but if we do see some nuclear, my guess is it would be one of those smaller nuclear reactors. Yeah. You can see here that it's actually getting smaller over time, the red. So if you go back to 2003, it looks like it was peaked. And so they shut down some nuclear as well in Canada.
Smaller and smaller every year. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, nuclear is yellow, not red.
Nuclear yellow.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
okay.
It is getting
almost
smaller.
almost the same along the years.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah, interesting. But there is is there a plan to finish the nuclear power plant or no?
I don't think there's, like in Germany, there's a big pressure to phase out nuclear and Japan has kind of been back and forth. But
Yeah.
in Canada, that's not really on the table. I mean, of course, there's people who are pushing for it, just as there's people pushing to expand it. But I think my guess is it'll just stay the same.
But it's not my field. Energy is not
Mine
field.
either.
My field is decision process. I work with mathematical models. So, but I have the perception that nuclear power plant is a kind of cleaner kind of energy at all. I don't know. I have this perception. Go ahead.
Well, it doesn't have any carbon emissions, so it does have that going for it.
Yeah. Virgilio.
Virgilio.
Please.
Keep going.
Good night, everyone. One of my worries about the hydrogen here in Brazil is the regulation. We have a lack of information from ONS and ANEEL that are limiting the introduction of this technology here in Brazil in many aspects. And but however, in some countries, in Norway and Denmark, I've seen a lot of good perspective for it on the last month. And I see that Europe is much more involved with this technology. From the perspective of the distribution itself, what kind of limitations you see besides the regulation and so on?
So I think the first challenge we have is we need to diversify our use of the fuel. So right now, as I said, it's mainly being used for petrochemical manufacturing as a feedstock. But there's efforts underway to start using it to displace diesel, to displace gasoline, to displace natural gas for transportation and heating, for example. So I think if we can promote some of those opportunities in the region, then the local distribution network will build out without much difficulty, I don't think. So we already have existing hydrogen pipelines in the region. We already have existing natural gas pipelines. People are used to that sort of thing in the region. Where I think it starts to get more difficult is when we talk about interprovincial pipelines to get to export markets, for example. And I think we've witnessed great difficulties in expanding pipelines in Canada for natural gas and oil. It will be interesting to see if we have similar difficulties with hydrogen. On the one hand, it might be easier because hydrogen is potentially perceived as a cleaner fuel. On the other hand, there might be increased safety concerns, so it might be more difficult. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But to answer your question, the network locally, I think, will not be a problem. But you know, bringing it across provinces or across countries, that'll start to get more difficult.
All right. From the side of the demand, which kind of limitations do you see here in Brazil, for example, in other countries similar to us?
Well, I mean, one issue is what. So I think a lot of people agree that decarbonization is a good thing to work towards, but there's a lot of different ways to get there, right? So in Brazil, for example, in the transportation sector, the ethanol is a big one that's widely used. Here, it's not as widely used. We have about 10% ethanol in all our gasoline as a maximum, typically. The other big one, of course, is electric vehicles, right? How does hydrogen compete with electric vehicles? So what we're thinking is for some heavier vehicles, possibly trucking, buses, those types of things, maybe aviation or even marine, hydrogen might make more sense because it has more energy density compared to electricity, some argue. But I think at the end of the day, we don't have to choose just one, right? We can choose multiple decarbonization pathways and they can be developed together. And indeed, you know, that's happening here as well. You see the city is buying out electric buses at the same time as it's buying up hydrogen buses, for example.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Daniel?
Professor Daniel.
Hi, Jeff. I'd
ahead.
like to congrats for your lecture, and I have a question. What is the employment situation for renewable energy in Canada?
Employment, did you say?
Yes, employment situation.
Jobs. Yeah,
Jobs,
I mean,
jobs.
part of the reason, go ahead.
Jobs and other stuff.
Yeah. I mean, part of the reason our group is pushing for this is because we see it as an economic opportunity. So we see it as a way to create jobs, as a way to maintain jobs, as a way to diversify jobs, transition skills from one industry to another, or even diversify from one industry to multiple industries, right? So we're trying to argue that companies that have traditionally served, for example, downhole tools for oil or gas, they have a lot of skills that could be used for the hydrogen sector as well. So all of a sudden they have two markets instead of just one market, which is a beneficial thing. So overall, we see it as a positive development in terms of economic opportunity, both jobs and you know, economic activity. I don't know off the top of my head the number of jobs, the number of people employed in hydrogen specifically, but a lot of our jobs in the region are related to manufacturing, are related to construction, are related to engineering and consulting, related to technologies, and all of these sectors, in my opinion, the hydrogen space presents an opportunity for them.
There is a new
Okay.
chain about hydrogen.
A new value chain, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay. Thank you,
If,
Professor.
for what it's
Any-
worth, I have the data here on my table right now. In 2044, we're looking at 30,000 total workers in oil and gas and hydrogen, and about 10,000 that would be specifically in hydrogen.
10,000.
About a third of the oil and gas
Third oil
sector.
and gas sector.
Oh, yeah. Anyone else?
I have one question more. We are talking about the energy plan, but there is an important variable to evaluate, and I don't know in the case of Alberta, the ratio reserves by production in terms of natural gas. How long time you can
Long time.
have that long time?
Yeah.
Oh, it's
I want to say
great.
300 years at current production.
Oh my
300.
God,
300.
unbelievable.
We're very,
Perfect.
very rich in fossil fuels here in Alberta.
Congratulations, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, don't quote me on that. I don't know if that's a specific number, but it's somewhere around there. It's a long time.
Okay, no, it's so I think that the CCS is really important because you need to take out this natural gas. This is a really rich situation for Alberta, for Canada, of course. Perfect.
Anyone else have any question? Okay. Okay, Professor Shoa.
Okay, but the most important now is to say thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank
You are
you,
very,
yeah.
very kind. You are perfect.
Fantastic.
Congratulations. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. So I would encourage anyone to reach out to me if you have things you still want to discuss. I'd be happy to do that. But if not, yeah, it was my pleasure. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you in September.
Definitely.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's
Great.
meet in
Thanks so
Rio.
much.
Have a lunch
Okay.
in Rio de Janeiro.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Victor, to follow us. Okay. Perfect.
No worries. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello.
Okay. Bye.
Good to see you
Bye.
again. Good to see you again.
Always good
Bye.
to see you, my friend.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Até logo.
Até logo.